Good day and welcome back to Royal News Daily, where crowns meet constitutions and royal tradition collides head-on with modern governance. Now, let me paint you a picture. A brand new king settles into his throne, the crown still metaphorically warm, and suddenly the conversation is not about pageantry or unity. It is about power. Not symbolic power, real influence. Because King Frederik's reign is unfolding at a moment when constitutional reform is no longer a whisper. It is a warning bell. Before we unpack why Denmark's monarchy is facing one of its most quietly dangerous challenges in decades, subscribe to Royal News Daily and click the notification bell. When political reform starts circling royal privilege, you will want to hear it here first. Let's get straight to it. Denmark prides itself on being a modern democracy with a ceremonial monarchy. But ceremonial does not mean meaningless. The monarch still holds constitutional roles, advisory functions, and symbolic authority that shape national identity. And recently, legal scholars, commentators, and reform advocates have begun questioning whether even that level of royal influence still fits the times. Enter King Frederik. His ascension came during a broader European trend, reassessing inherited power structures. From expense scrutiny to transparency laws, monarchies are being asked to justify not just their cost, but their constitutional relevance. Denmark is no exception. What has changed is tone. Discussions that once lived in academic journals are now appearing in mainstream media. Should royal advisory roles be reduced? Should ceremonial functions be more clearly separated from state authority? Should royal privileges be further codified or curtailed? These are not radical proposals. But for a monarchy built on continuity, even gentle reform feels seismic. From an Australian political perspective, this feels familiar. Constitutional reform is rarely explosive at first. It starts with clarification, then modernization. Then suddenly, long-standing powers are quietly redefined. By the time anyone notices, the structure has already shifted. King Frederik now finds himself at the center of this debate, whether he likes it or not. Supporters argue the monarchy already operates within strict limits and poses no threat to democracy. Critics counter that symbolism itself carries influence. And influence without accountability is increasingly unacceptable in modern governance. The palace response has been measured. Calm, almost studiously neutral. No strong statements. No public lobbying, which is understandable. The monarchy cannot appear defensive without reinforcing the very arguments reformers are making. But silence carries risk. Because when reform conversations accelerate without royal input, outcomes are shaped without royal influence. And for a new king trying to define his reign, that is a precarious position. Here is where it gets more complex. King Frederik is widely seen as pragmatic and modern. He is not an absolutist throwback. He understands public mood. That makes him uniquely positioned to guide the monarchy through reform, but also uniquely vulnerable if reform is framed as a response to royal irrelevance. Australians will recognize this dilemma instantly. Leaders who inherit institutions under scrutiny often become symbols of everything critics want to change, even if they personally embody reform. The danger is not abolition. Denmark is nowhere near that. The danger is erosion, piece by piece, function by function, until the monarchy exists, but without the authority that once justified its presence. And that is harder to fight because it looks reasonable. Recent commentary has already hinted that King Frederik's reign may be defined less by ceremony and more by negotiation, with lawmakers, public opinion, and a generation increasingly skeptical of inherited status. This is not scandal in the tabloid sense. This is structural tension, the kind that reshapes institutions quietly, while everyone is distracted by headlines about holidays and family drama. Which brings us to the uncomfortable truth. While royal scandals grab attention, constitutional reform changes reality. And King Frederik is walking into this debate at a time when the monarchy's internal unity has already been questioned. A divided family does not strengthen the crown's negotiating position. Every unresolved rift weakens the argument for stability. Every communication misstep feeds the narrative that reform is overdue. The palace knows this. That is why messaging has leaned so heavily on continuity, service, and national unity. These are not just values. They are defenses. For King Frederik, the challenge is delicate. Push back too hard, and he appears out of step with democratic evolution. Accept reform too quietly, and the monarchy risks fading into ceremonial irrelevance. This is the tightrope. And unlike scandals that pass,